What's up, peers, and welcome to Open Source Everything here on the World Crypto Network. Today we have a interesting conversation because we've chanted this stuff for quite some time, and it's a mantra in Bitcoin. Your keys, your Bitcoin. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin. And it's not just empty words. This shit actually means something. And it means something. And today we're going to talk about especially why it's so important to keep your keys, and not just for on-chain Bitcoin, right? But on-chain Bitcoin is easy. Like we've just tried to how to really take our self-sovereignty here. But how we're actually interested today is how can we do this with Lightning Network, right? How can we make sure that we have non-custodial Lightning Network nodes and wallets? Because that is, of course, just as important, if not more important, than on-chain Bitcoin. So this is something that we really have to solve. It might not be as easy, but nobody said that Bitcoin was going to be easy. Well, I'm glad that I'm not going to be alone. I'm joined today by the one and only Shinobius Monk from Block Digest. What's up?
Hey. What's going on, party people?
Well, first important question, Shinobi. How do you like your Coinbase account and like in general, like your custodial wallets? They're awesome, right?
They're steaming piles of shit that track absolutely everything I do and throw them in a database that's going to sit there for years waiting for government subpoenas. Totally awesome.
Yay, right? Sharing is caring. And it's always good not just to share all the metadata with others. That way they know how much money you've spent when and where. That's always good. Because then, right, it's much easier if something happens to you. They can find you much easier, right? So that is always great.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, custody is just something intrinsically tied to surveillance in this day and age. And that, I think, is where the problem comes in. It's not trusting somebody else to actually manage control of the funds that's the real issue with me. It's the way that ties together into a bird's eye view of absolutely everything that you do. And like that's the real problem. It's not the custody aspect. It's everything that comes along with that custody and how in the way things are currently done, they're just intrinsically tied together. Like there is no real operational custodial service in this day and age that doesn't pretty much just offer up your privacy on a silver platter to whoever is like performing that custody duty. And there is absolutely no intrinsic reason why things have to be that way.
Yes, exactly right. But Shinobi, don't you think that all this surveillance talk is all just a big conspiracy, right? They're surely they're not companies specializing in all this stuff, right?
Stop giving me flashbacks. You're like all the people who called me crazy in the early 2000s talking about echelon and government surveillance, and then had Snowden blow the lid wide on things a million times more advanced and pervasive than that.
Yeah, right. That's the thing, man. First, they don't tell you that they're spying on you, obviously. But even if they do tell you, most of the time, like what they tell you is either not the truth or only the partial truth. So we know that chain analysis companies exist. Like Coinbase just acquired another one, these bastards, right? So we know that this stuff is going on. But again, we don't know the entire truth, and we definitely, I don't think, know exactly the current state of the art of the technology being used. But we clearly know, I think, as far back as the Silk Road, and that the FBI was looking into the ownership of Bitcoin. Do you know when this entire like surveillance started?
Very early on. I mean, it's something that was pretty much like acknowledged from day one. Like Bitcoin has severe limitations in terms of privacy. I mean, even in the white paper itself, like the privacy model is explicitly spelled out. Like everything is pseudonymous, not anonymous. And it's just kind of changing the wall of where identity can be tied to things as opposed to destroying any kind of connection. And I mean, that's part of why these surveillance tools can actually be countered. Like it's not inherently the blockchain itself that really is the bread and butter of making things surveillable. It's the ability to tie metadata to the blockchain. Like without that metadata, without actually being able to connect an identity to a cluster of addresses, without being able to draw that distinguishing line between things when watching movements on chain, like there's not really any kind of meaningful data that can be gathered from that. Like it's not, it's, it might sound silly to say it, but it's not really the blockchain itself that is so destructive to privacy. It's all of the things outside of the blockchain that can be tied to it. Like it's that metadata, it's all of that external data that actually presents all of the threat. Because when you can start tying things into the blockchain, you can start removing the uncertainty and the statistical margin of error. And that's where like the danger starts creeping in.
Yes, exactly, right. The blockchain itself is actually rather private, right? It's of course not perfect. It's pseudonymous and it's a indestructible record. So definitely not a good place to do some shady stuff, because you can't really delete evidence, right? But the thing is that still, if you don't reuse addresses, that's already a huge step forward. Right, but then of course, still, because there is the chain of digital signatures that represent the UTXO, the Bitcoin, that is actually in the blockchain in the current set. Uh, that still has all the transaction history, and there are different tools that can be used to break this transaction history even today, right? And that's of course coin join transactions, which were proposed back in 2013, and there have been a couple implementations. And you, Shinobi, and I both really value the Wasabi wallet, which does the Schnorr blind signature coin joins, which are most well tested coin joins that we have so far, and they work pretty damn good, right? So what are your thoughts on Wasabi and how it breaks the chain of digital signatures?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge help, but you can go a big step further than that. I mean, like Wasabi still has the limitations of the mounted outputs. You still have to have like things mapped together in that way to actually meaningfully destroy associations between things. But like it's just the metadata and the statistical assumptions that really tie things together. Like a big part of chain analysis is the common ownership heuristic. Like if there are multiple outputs in a transaction, then in all likelihood it's the same owner controlling all of those outputs. You can destroy that with the pay to endpoint, or pay join as people are calling it now, and that completely undermines that whole heuristic. Like they're just making assumptions, connecting metadata to things, and then drawing conclusions from that. And so if you stop giving them that metadata, if you start breaking those assumptions, then the ability to actually meaningfully associate payments to a specific entity or tie them together, it starts disappearing. And like, to kind of come back to the topic of custody, like if you can create a custodial relationship that isn't providing that metadata, I don't think there's a problem with a custodial product in and of itself. It's the fact that the way they're done now, the Coinbases, the big exchanges, the Bitfinex, the Binance, like it's all creating metadata that's connecting itself to the blockchain. And if you can actually perform that custodial role without creating all of that metadata, that's the big problem, and you can solve it. If you get rid of that metadata, you're preserving people's privacy, and then ultimately it just boils down to trusting the custodian, and it's completely up to an individual to decide who they want to trust.
Yes, exactly right. With all this, it's always depends on a case by case basis and on every individual. And your security model, your trade model, and your trade offs are going to be different from anyone else. So this is something that no one can dictate how you should do it, but you should investigate for yourself. What are your benefits and what are your disadvantages that you're willing to trade off with? And of course, the metadata is a huge thing. And I think it already starts when you're buying Bitcoin, right? If you're buying on Coinbase, which you should never, ever, ever do, like you're fucked from the get-go. And I don't like it will be really difficult to recover from that at all. Of course, there are tools that might help you, but you're going to start off already on the wrong foot. So I personally use the BISC decentralized exchange. It has a really good and useful decentralized, self-hosted, non-custodial, and especially encrypted and no KYC exchange to get Bitcoin that is not necessarily tied to my identity. So this already helps quite a lot to get a Bitcoin directly from another peer, right? Not from a custodial exchange, but from another individual. That might be on BISC, that might be in person with a cash trade or on local Bitcoins or whatever. So what are your thoughts on getting your foot into Bitcoin? What is the best way to do this without wasting or without throwing too many metadata at it?
Yeah, things like BISC or cash trading or the ATMs if you have a phone number not associated with you. Like that's you can obscure your ownership of a Bitcoin after the fact, but you can never get rid of that record that you bought one and that you actually owned some. And like that's a very sticky thing to try and walk away from, because like now there is this record, you took possession of this, and it's pretty much impossible to prove that you do not have possession of a Bitcoin anymore. Like it's simple to prove you have one. I sign a key. It's absolutely impossible to prove that I do not have that key and control over a Bitcoin.
Yes, exactly. You cannot prove a negative, right? And especially when the negative is, do you know 12 English words? Yes or no? Oh, I don't know if I do know the 12 English words, the specific ones, right? So that is always very tricky. And uh, it also is especially tricky, right? In the case where, for example, you're being tortured by someone who wants to get your private keys. There is just no way of really proving that you don't have any. So this is really tricky. And of course, when someone is hacking Coinbase and just seeing your email address, right, that would be enough. See your email address, see maybe when it was registered, maybe when the last time was that you logged in. That would be it. And then he can already deduct, okay, this individual, he knows about Bitcoin, he's registered at an exchange, and he's been logging on there recently. Most likely he has a couple. Maybe I knock at his door and knock a couple teeth out and see where it takes me. Right. So this even just the email address might be enough to completely screw you over.
Yeah. And these things, like they all come together in a very negative way regarding custody. Like it's trusting somebody to control your funds and having to have some proof that those are your funds. And the way things are done, they continuously tie that proof into identity, into actually who you are, like footprints that can be followed to identify you in the real world. And it's unbelievably stupid that things are done in that way when the Bitcoin network itself has the proof that you own something not tied to an identity. It's cryptography. Like that's something that's existed for decades. You have that mechanism to go to the custodian and prove I am the one who entrusted you with my money and not identify yourself. And yet all of these things are constructed in a way that does not take advantage of that underlying tool that functions as a foundation for the whole system they're building on.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe as first in the conversation, let's keep it focused on the base layer blockchain for now. Do we need the blockchain to prove this, right? This ownership to the custodian, the claim to Bitcoin? Do we somehow need the help of the blockchain with that? Or is there some other type of cryptography more useful, just a regular SQL database, so to say? Or do we really need the Bitcoin blockchain, not any shitcoin blockchain?
No, you don't. Like if you go to a custodian and provide them with a public key and then send them Bitcoin, you don't need the blockchain at any point to sign something mapping to that public key to prove I am the person in possession of that. Like that doesn't like really factor into the proof of identity. Like you've given them the means to identify yourself when you establish a relationship with them, and that's it. That's all you need is a key. I can prove it at any time. You give me anything to sign and I can sign it, and you can see that I am the one who gave you that public key to establish this relationship.
Right, but then of course the strawman argument here would be that what happens if you lose that private key, right? What happens if you lose that access to this type of identification? Because of course you cannot lose access to your physical identification.
Well, that's just the way things go. I mean, what happens if you lose a $20 bill? Like, you can still lose access to an email account. Like, what happens if your phone gets destroyed and then you forget your Gmail password? Oopsies.
Yeah,
I mean,
right. We say your keys, your Bitcoin, but that applies to all types of passwords, right? It's your responsibility to keep your access codes, your passwords secure and occulted, hidden from others. So I mean, there are of course best practices on how you can make sure that a secure password does not get lost, right? So, for example, if you have a Diceware mnemonic seed password, much easier to back up 12 English words than like 50 character of some cryptographic gibberish. But still, there it's your responsibility, right? And if you do not, or if you cannot and don't want to take care of that responsibility, what would then be the other alternatives?
deal with giving away all of your privacy. I mean, you either take control of something that can prove who you are and don't lose it, that is not connected to your identity, or you give up all of your privacy. You tie it to something that you can't lose, and then you are just creating a giant pile of that metadata that not only damages your privacy, but can start to damage other people's by removing you from the crowd.
Oh yeah, that's actually quite another great point that you bring up, that privacy likes company, right? If you walk outside on a street and you're the only one wearing a Shinobi's mask, like Shinobi is doing here, then you are gonna be pretty the sore thumb, right? Everyone is gonna look at you because you are the odd one out. You're the only one wearing a mask, right? So that's gonna be odd. That's gonna be something special. That's it's gonna actually draw attention to you. And then on the other hand, right, if you're at a ball, a masquerade ball, where everyone is wearing masks, well, then nobody's gonna care if you, the specific person, is also wearing a mask. Because the anonymity set of all the peers here at this party all have a mask. And this means there's a large anonymity set, and thus the individual no longer draws that much attention to him. And thus, of course, the anonymity set is critically important. So we need to have privacy preserving tools that are being used by everyone. So do you think that we can get these best practices out there so that everyone is using that? How much can be made as the default?
Most of it. I mean, like, that's, you know, it kind of come full circle, I guess, to the custodial lightning wallets. Like, that is my huge problem with them. Is you look at a custodial product, and really the big downside for the person constructing it is the risk of being a custodian. Like, that is a legal regulatory risk. And, you know, there's pretty clear that people out there building things like Tip and Me are okay with taking that risk. Like, you are custodying other people's funds. So you've taken the first step. You are taking the risk of doing that with the potential of a government or a regulatory agency coming down on you. So why are you not taking the next step of doing something to actually preserve your users' privacy? Like, there are two things with Tip and Me that are an issue. Like, they tie things to your Twitter account. A lot of people out there use their real name on their Twitter account. You have just connected it directly to your real world identity. People have an email address associated with their Twitter account. 99% of people, that is tied to your real world identity. You have used a phone number to set that up. You probably have your real name attached to it. Like, the third thing is your phone number. It is a very common thing nowadays for Twitter to just freeze up, decide you're a bot, and not change its mind unless you provide them with your phone number. So there are three ways here your Twitter account can just directly lead back to your legal real world identity. And now every single thing that Tip and Me is collecting on your behalf is tied to that account. And that account is either directly giving away your identity or indirectly itself associated with things that can. So now there are two pots of data that either alone or put together, depending on the individual, can associate those payments with a specific individual. And then on the other side, when you go to withdraw your funds from Tip and Me, you need to give them a Lightning invoice. You need to give them your Lightning node, which comes with your Lightning node's public key address, which comes with, if you're not using Tor or a VPN or something in the middle, your IP address. So you have just completely identified yourself in every way possible by using this service. And the entire service is doing absolutely nothing architecturally to mitigate this, to create a disconnection between this information and Lightning payments being sent to them on your behalf. Why? You've taken the main risk here. You are custodying other people's funds. That has potential legal ramifications for you. Why are you not going the next step? Why are you not trying to construct things in a way to protect users' privacy? Why are you not moving architecturally all the way to something like a Xiaomi and eCash server? It's something that is completely private. It is at scale impossible to censor. Like, you don't know who's paying who without a ridiculously small user base with a timing analysis. So why aren't you doing that? The risk, the disincentive, the argument constantly put out there for people not doing that is, I don't want to take custody of people's funds and take that risk. You're already taking custody of people's funds. You've already taken that risk. So why aren't you doing it the right way?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, great points. And maybe the first thing that you brought up was that it ties oftentimes your real name, right, to this or to this account, to these Bitcoin desks that you receive. And of course, the common objection would be, well, this is a public donation anyhow, right? I receive these tips, these Lightning tips, as a kind of a tip. Well, it's called tipping me anyhow, right? So it's going to be I do something publicly that everyone can see, and then they can tip me and they can pay me if they think that what I've just publicly done is of a service. So don't you think that then when it is going to be a public act anyhow, that here the privacy no longer matters?
No. I can take a signed Xiaomi and eCash token, a digital bearer certificate. I can encrypt it to a key that you leave out there publicly. I can just send it to you over a Twitter message. Right there in the open. Nobody has any idea which Xiaomi token I just gave you. Nobody can without the key to decrypt it. You can just decrypt that and redeem it at your leisure, with no way for anybody in this arrangement to see which token you decrypted from that, to tie that when you go redeem it and transfer it over to your control. Like, you can just do it right in the open and be very private about it. So there's no reason not to do it.
Yeah, precisely, right? And it's not that only because you are in a public space that all of a sudden you want to be completely naked, right? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Yes, you are in a public space, and yes, there can be attribution from you to your act, to then the reward or the consequence for this act. But this doesn't mean that you should be completely transparent and completely like a glass figure. No, absolutely not. And especially, well, or let's say it really depends on the use case. Of course, for example, if you are the custodian, right? If let's say you take on public donations so that you can build the church in Kenya, or right, some other colloquial example here. That, of course, would be possible, and you could do that completely anonymous as well. But the question is, for those, let's say, charitable public donations, where you need to forward these payments to another cause, would you say that privacy is still of a concern here?
Yes. Like, that is, I can still withdraw funds from this thing and drop them somewhere and go, here they are. Like, there is no reason to be creating any kind of graph when you don't need to. Like, privacy should always be the default, especially with custodial things, because that is where you are hitting that wall, that danger, where all of this metadata is being created, and that is what is really enabling attacks on privacy through the entire stack of a system like Bitcoin. Without that metadata, almost the vast majority of information that makes chain analysis meaningfully useful is gone. Like, we need to remove that.
Yes. Yes, very true. And a great point so far, right? And then also, as you said earlier, that when you withdraw from this custodial service on the Lightning Network, you provide a invoice, and this invoice contains your public Lightning node identification, your your ID, your public key, and also your IP address, right? So if you are on the Lightning Network and if you do not enable the Tor-only communication, this means that then everyone knows where exactly you are on the internet. And that is quite insane, I would argue. And it's especially concerning, right? If then further you tie your custodial wallet account with your name, right? Because then we have your name, your email address, the telephone number, your IP address, your public node information, how much money you make, and how often or like how frequently you might use that. So that already sums up to quite a lot of metadata.
Yeah. And I mean, there's, again, like this, that last mile issue of withdrawing could be addressed with things like rendezvous routing on the Lightning Network, so that you obscure who's actually receiving the payment. But of course, instead of waiting and doing things properly, somebody rushes out, does things right now without the tools available to do it in a privacy preserving way. And now it is blown up into a huge, widely used thing because of the way memes propagate on the internet. And like, it's like, what the fuck? Like that tweet I made a couple days ago, like, crypto Twitter before Lightning. Stop using custodial services. Like, they destroy your privacy and sovereignty. Crypto Twitter after Lightning. Bro, they plugged this fucking custodial thing with Lightning, bro. Dope, bro. Like, it's like, just because you put the word Lightning in front of something, all of a sudden, one of the core things people have advocated against, seen the huge problems with, everybody just ignores all of those problems now because Lightning in front of it. It's absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so, right? And then I would even go further that when you have a full custodial Lightning Network wallet, it's not really Lightning Network, right? If you, for example, have a tip in me account and you receive Lightning Network payments, well, the sender, he is using Lightning Network, right? He has a full Lightning Network node. He is constructing this entire route and sends then the pre-image and everything. And of course, the tip in me server, he has the Lightning wallet, right? He has all the secrets, he has all the funds locked in, he does all the channel management, he has all the keys to the Bitcoin, everything. And you have no Bitcoin private key, you have no Lightning Network secrets, you have no node, you have no channel, you have nothing. All you have is somehow your login data to the centralized database that represents some ownership claim on the Lightning Network node of that custodial service. So, like, when people say that they're using Lightning Network and that it's super efficient, it's like how easy it is to set up the Lightning Network node on, or like wallet on TipInMe, well, it's not Lightning Network. It's a centralized database that gives you access to someone else's Lightning Network. But it's like the cloud, it's someone else's computer, not yours.
Yeah. And I mean, the same thing goes for things like Blue Wallet. I mean, like, that's like one of the most widely used air quote Lightning wallets I've seen. It's a custodial thing. You connect up to somebody else's node. They have the channels. You're just seeing a balance that they credit you in a database. And another thing with like Blue Wallet specifically is, like, they had multiple race conditions in their code that allow people to lose money, for them to become insolvent. Like, it was BT Sessions, if I remember correctly, actually withdrew more money than he should have been able to.
Oh,
and was
really?
very public in calling that out. And another friend of mine actually started going through the whole code base and found like 4 different race conditions that would allow users to over withdraw. And the people maintaining the wallet didn't even fundamentally understand what was causing these issues in the code when my buddy was going through and trying to explain this to them. Like they pushed one code update that they actually thought fixed it, and it didn't. So like it's not just the trust, the custodian aspect. It's not just the privacy issues. It's also the competence of the custodian. Are they going to actually build things out in a way that properly secures money? Because all you have to do is let one person withdraw money that they shouldn't be able to, and now they're technically insolvent. They don't have the money to give everybody what is owed to them.
Oh, yeah, very much so, right? And just recently, what Bitcoin did, the podcast here, he finished his episodes on Mt. Gox, right? And what a huge dilemma that was. And guess how that started? It was one dude, it was like his bedroom project, and his Magic the Gathering online cards that he was selling online. And he's like, oh, Bitcoin, that's cute. I'll do that. I'll sell that as well. A couple months later, he sells the entire joint to Mark Capellas, already with 80,000 euros or dollars lost. Like funds, Bitcoin, or no, was it 80,000 Bitcoin was being lost? I think 80,000 or 30, it doesn't matter. A couple thousand Bitcoin were lost already after only a couple months of this one dude in his own bedroom coding on this little project. And like it wouldn't be that bad if it would have been his money, right? Then at least like it's his thing. Yeah, he messed up, and well, sucks for him, but at least it's like his responsibility. But it was not his money; it was the custodial wallet, and thus you have to be like triple and quadruple careful. And we've seen with Mt. Gox how horribly this can end, and especially when it starts horribly in the beginning and you don't do anything against it. And then you prolong it and you prolong it and prolong it, and after 3-4 years, all of a sudden we have a couple billion here in damages. And that's exactly what has happened to Bitcoin. That's what spawned the meme of your keys, your Bitcoin. And it's been a solid meme for a long time. But as you said, like as soon as Lightning Network comes around, somehow we forget all the things that happened.
Yeah, and it's Lightning Network itself, the protocol, is an amazing thing. It is going to enable way more scalability, privacy, sustainability of use of the blockchain. Like we can't even begin to sit and think about all the different new types of use cases it will create because people haven't tinkered with it. But the big problem, I'm starting to see with this shit like Blue Wallet, like tipping me, is honestly, I can't think of any way to put it except we are going to start importing some of the problems that have been plaguing Ethereum. And that's just people who have no experience outside of I build web apps or I build an app for a smartphone, trying to just slap together things on top of Lightning Network and not really having any experience with the type of security issues or just generally overall architecture, keeping in mind security or the issues of privacy that are so important in this space. And people are just going to blindly promote them because Lightning is in front of it. And I think we very much are going to have the exact same kind of problem that Ethereum did with all kinds of just stupid, badly designed, buggy, pointless smart contracts, because we're going to start drawing a lot of these app developers. And I'm just going to slap something together and drop it on top of Lightning, and everybody's just going to grab it and meme it because everybody is so desperate to see Lightning doing something right now, being ready for stuff right now, instead of people actually taking the time to do things right, to wait for all of the features and capabilities that are not deployed on Lightning. It's still in beta. People it seems to me like people keep forgetting this because there are actually merchants accepting it now and wallets popping up, but it is still in beta. It does not have the full feature set that is being worked on by developers. It is not a complete protocol yet, and it probably won't be for a very long time. But that doesn't mean like let's just start slapping together fundamentally flawed things that undermine privacy, that aren't architected properly from the point of view of security. Like that's not how something like this should be handled. Like the way Bitcoin has been developed for 10 years now is slow, steady, do things properly, do things right and secure. And it just seems to me like that attitude is going completely out the window because people can just slap the word lightning in front of something.
Very great point that you bring up, that in the early days, Lightning Network was truly reckless. Like, it was not just a random hashtag, it really was. And right in the very early days, when you made a payment, it was 20, 30, 40 failed routing attempts before you finally got through, because just there was no liquidity. The network wasn't there yet. And like, even if the peers were there, the code was not efficient yet. It was not yet built out in order to be like really usable. And it's kind of a, well, both kind of a blessing and a curse, I would say, that right now as we're speaking, it's just so intuitive and so smooth, and 99% of the payments go through across like the first, second, maybe third route, and that still happens all before you see any user error that the payment has failed. So most of the time, your payment is going to go through, and it's going to feel really, really intuitive, and it's going to be ridiculous fast. I mean, like I think like the highest I got was something like 10,000 payments per second. That's insane, and it's like we have this already. It's breathtaking technology, and it's a huge improvement to how Bitcoin was before, right? So it's easy to feel cocky, to feel overconfident, like, okay, we're done. We no longer have to care. We no longer have to be cautious, and that is really, really careful. That is really careless. So we really need to make sure that we get this right. And as you said, this takes care, and it is rather scary to see that there is a lot of, let's say, a lot of unsustained FUD going on. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's just so frustrating that like the core philosophy, the core attitude about Bitcoin is just literally being completely thrown out the window just because of a meme, of a word that people can just slap in front of things and redo some failed project from the past with this new word in front of it. And everybody is just latching onto it. Like, people who've been in this space for years are propagating it to all of the new people who came in during the big bull market that we had in 2017, and in dragging them into it when they weren't here to see the problems and see these things fail before. And it's just like, what the hell, what is going on here? Like, are people more concerned with actually doing things right, like fixing the fundamental problems in finance and these types of services, or just creating the illusion of adoption to just throw around as a sales pitch?
Yes, yes, and that's right. It's difficult. On the one hand, we don't want to be right. We don't want to be like push others away and be like, no, don't try this out. Don't play around with it. Of course, we want them to experiment, to test something, and to see where this can take, and to build ideas, so that eventually they can build amazing tools and technologies, so that hopefully they will relieve some uneasiness with some cool product and feature that is truly needed. But I also do feel that right now we kind of really have the, like, it's, yes, we have things to do with Lightning, but it's like it's internet bragging. It's not really needed. Let's say, yes, we can send 1 milli Satoshi over Lightning Network, and it's ridiculous and it's cool. But is it worth the risk, right? And the privacy concerns that we talked about earlier? Do we really need Lightning Network at this point?
No, we don't. I mean, like, yeah, I've used it. I've spun up a node and tinkered around with things. I've tried out one of the actual mobile wallets, Eclair, not one of these like custodial bastardizations like Blue Wallet. And it's nice. It's working. It's shaping up well, but I don't need it. Like I seriously have not used Lightning period except to buy shit from the Blockstream store or one of the merchants popping up that's accepting stuff to buy swag. And yeah, I'll use Lightning instead of on chain because I can. But it's a curiosity. I'm not using it at any kind of wide level. It's not ready. It's not really there yet. It's something to play with and tinker around, not start trying to just drive this massive adoption with half-finished, flawed things that aren't taking privacy seriously, that in some cases aren't even taking security seriously. You know, I'm still almost as pissed about Blue Wallet as I am about Tippin' Me. Like, there are 4 different race conditions that can have modifications happen in an actual Lightning channel and not have the modifications to the user balance database happen atomically. One can happen without the other going through. That can lose people money. And no, like BTC Sessions made like one tweet about it, covered it once, and everybody just forgot about it. Everybody keeps shilling this wallet. Everybody is still using it. Like, are you kidding me? Like, seriously?
Yes, and especially like the meme that we need custodial wallets because they are so much more usable. And like that's bullshit. I mean, it really, really is. Yes, maybe setting up your full node with a complete Lightning Network thing. Yeah, okay, maybe. But as you said, the Eclair mobile wallet, it's ridiculous. Like it's an SPV wallet. Yes, again, privacy concerns, no neutrino yet and stuff. But still, it's okay, it's send only. Yeah, I mean, how often are you going to receive Lightning Network payments? Let's be honest. And so the thing is, like, you are going to be 10x, 100x, both more secure and more private with the Eclair mobile wallet that is a fully fledged Lightning Network node, right? Just, well, no Bitcoin full node under it. And then, however, right, with Blue Wallet, it's again it's a database, and the database is not going to be secure, right? Digital money is not going to be easy. And yes, we found 4 race conditions so far to withdraw money from that unlawfully. And the thing is, like, there's going to be 1,001 more bugs in the code that we have not yet discovered, and many of them will be critical. And it's very much just a question of time to find these flaws and to exploit them. And then the question is, who has to pay for that? Well, it's going to be you who has the funds in there, right?
Yeah, like it's just impatience. Like, and it really, really shocks me. Like, some of the people I see pushing these things who've been in this space for like 5 years or more, just like pushing things that are going to damage this ecosystem in regards to privacy, like not taking the issue of software security seriously. And they just keep pushing this crap just to create a perception that, oh my God, adoption is here and it's happening. Like, no, it's not. Like, this is like, we are still, people who own Bitcoin, an insignificant rounding error in the overall population of the globe. And nothing is going to change that except time. Like, memeing about all of this stuff on Twitter isn't going to magically create adoption. It's not going to open the floodgates and drag people in. Like, that's not how any of this works. It's going to be time. It's going to be the economic incentives playing out and demonstrating themselves at a larger scale. Like, people are still looking at Bitcoin. It was $20,000 and now it's all the way down here. It's a bubble. That's going to keep happening through market cycles for a while. Like, memeing, here is Lightning Network, and pointing at a database somebody maintains tied to your Twitter account isn't going to change that. And it's like the perspective is just disappearing in the name of creating false perceptions. And it's really kind of sad to me.
Yes, but again, right, the straw man argument would be with that, of course, when we have like Jack Dorsey and Elon Musk tweeting about Bitcoin and the Lightning Torch, that of course, then with their huge followers and their huge influence, that this will be, of course, the biggest marketing boost that we can get. And maybe we need this, especially here in the bear market, to get things going. So don't you think that we can compromise here a bit in order to get more momentum going and then the price, of course, to the moon again?
I don't really think that factors into it. Like markets don't move because of Twitter memes. They move because of people's economic actions. And like, you know, the Bitcoin holders as a whole are some small, insignificant fraction of the global population. People on Twitter talking about Bitcoin are an even smaller fraction of that. Like these are not things that drive the market. And I mean, just like looking at like Jack Dorsey trying to go like, wow, look at this awesome innovative thing and tipping me and dragging like all of the attention to that. How is it awesome or new? Like it's literally just change tip, except you send money to it over Lightning Network instead of on chain. Like that's not new. It's literally something that's more than 5 years old that failed with the word lightning put in front of it. Like this is like it's fucking sad. Like and you know, again, like I love the Lightning protocol. It is going to do amazing things. But like the way tipping me is being thrown around, it's literally like I'm watching Bitcoiners and they're acting exactly like Bcashers. They're literally just recycling old failed things from years and years ago and trying to act like it's some new innovative invention. Like it's not. It's an old thing that was done before and you're just recycling it.
Yes, exactly, right. There were a bunch of these things beforehand, right? We had, for example, change tip, right? That was, well, was a somewhat different user experience, but after all, it was Bitcoin tweets, Bitcoin tips on Twitter, right? And then also there was even further stuff that, for example, we have the Pollo feeder, right, where you can pay a Lightning invoice in order to feed some chickens. Well, awesome idea, lovely, but again, right, also something similar has been done already to feed what was it? I think it was some other type of animal. I think it was cows that you could feed with on-chain transactions that I saw some time back. So this stuff has existed already. But I mean, the thing is that Bitcoin is money first and foremost, and there is only a limited amount of things that you can do with money, right? And paying for stuff is, of course, the main thing that you're going to do with the money. And so, don't you think that it's kind of unfair to say that the Lightning Network, because it just is another way of doing money, that it has to completely revolutionize the things? And maybe the stuff that we've tried 5 years ago didn't work because, well, the on-chain just didn't scale and much more efficiency needed to be gained. And maybe now with Lightning we can try all these old ideas again, put only the Lightning spin on top, and that is enough.
No, I really don't think that is a response to this. I mean, like, you know, one of the things I don't like about tipping me is how are you making money? You're not making money off of these lightning tips. Like you are literally talking about fractions of a cent. Like this is part of the fundamental reason change tip went under. It's not a viable business model. You have to maintain servers that scale to your user base. And you're literally talking about money flying around in terms of fractions of a cent. Like change tip raised millions of dollars. And they're literally people tossing around fractions of a penny, which was like that in withdrawals in terms of like what they can try and scrape fees off of. When I'm trying to withdraw 10 cents from tipping me and you shave off a fraction of a penny, that's not even paying your server costs, let alone giving you a viable business model. And you're sitting on a shit ton of metadata tying everybody's activity to their identity. Like that's a way to make money. That's unsettling to me because the just processing tips, that's not going to make enough money to even keep your servers running, let alone give you a viable business model. Like, that's the thing, is like, that was not a viable business model. That's why it failed. It's not because Lightning wasn't there. It's because it's not a workable business.
Yeah, very interesting. And the of course, then there are things possible with Lightning Network that just simply was not possible with on-chain payments. So, for example, like the perfect use case, I think, is short bits with Chris Stewart, who's also been on the WCN a couple times, and he's working on short bits. So he's doing pay per API call, right? So streaming money, as Andreas likes to call it. And that is, of course, something that is only possible with Lightning and not with on-chain at all. So do you think that we should focus much more on these things that are only possible with Lightning?
Yeah, like, if people, like, we actually interviewed Chris on Block Digest a while back too. Like, that is a genuinely new thing that you could not cost effectively do before. And like, yes, if people really want, they're so desperate for memes to show the use and the adoption of Lightning Network, yeah, concentrate on things that are actually new, that actually weren't possible before. Like, stop just recycling unviable things from the past and throwing the word Lightning in front of them.
So when Lightning ICOs? Oh God.
When Giacomo gets RGB done.
Hopefully never. We need to stop him.
Yeah, it's just ridiculously frustrating to see something like Lightning like wind up creating this dynamic where it's like I said, it's literally like watching Bitcoiners act like Bcashers. It's watching all of the development philosophy of this space just go out the window in the name of just a perception. It's absurd.
Very much. And the identity of Bitcoin is something that is very, let's say, difficult to preserve. And I think Bitcoin is not going to lose because of, well, some major technical flaw. Of course, it could, but I think the main battle that we have to fight is one of identity and let's say culture. And the meme of your keys, your Bitcoin is the identity and culture of Bitcoin. And without that, it is no longer Bitcoin. And so that we see now this massive push with a Lightning Network. We need to have a custodial service here. That's just how it goes. Otherwise, nobody would be running his own node. Like, it is very much so an attack on Bitcoin, like on the pure ethos of Bitcoin, not just on the technology, but very much so on the culture. And I think that is much more problematic and risky, because Bitcoin itself is a social phenomenon. If we do not have the culture and the dedicated peers who will defend it, then it's not going to be strong. Bitcoin is not anti-fragile because of the technology. Bitcoin is anti-fragile because of the peers behind the technology.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, like I said before we started getting off into like the more philosophical drivers of some of this stuff, it's like the custody, I really don't have a problem with custody. Like, people who manage actually enforcing things on the network should be people who are going to take that seriously. And if that means custody for a lot of people, okay. But like, you can take that philosophy of censorship resistance, you can take that philosophy of privacy and open access, and you can build it into the custodial things. So like, people who are going to do something custodial need to do that. It's not doing that is when you start eroding and damaging Bitcoin. It's not the custody itself, it's how you actually implement it.
Okay, yeah. So let's say custody like Coinbase, not so good, but custody like Voltoro, rather good. Something like this.
I mean, I would more use a Xiaomi eCash server over Voltoro, but yeah, like, move more towards more privacy, less identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, right when we let's share my screen. When we see this here, for example, we have there are a couple vouchers. So for example, the Koala Studio, where you can play some Lightning Network powered chess. You pay once a Lightning Network invoice, and then you have a voucher. And this voucher is your account, right? So when you get this, you don't have to type in any name or ID. You simply press here, create account, and you will get a seemingly random number right here. That is then here both your, let's say, your access to the centralized, absolutely custodial Koala Studio. But at least you don't have to create any name, or you don't have to use your Twitter account or what something, right? So I would say this is a decent first step. And maybe another thing would here be the Donner Lab voucher developed by Konstantin and Jonas Nick, working here both on Lightning Network games. And these as well, right? You simply set, well, let's say I want to have 500 vouchers of 10 Satoshis each, and then I would buy these and get I can, okay, 100. And then I would get my vouchers completely without the identity here as soon as I pay this invoice. So we already have a way of doing these custodial services without necessarily tying this to the identity. I mean, this is not perfect, but what do you think of that?
That is a very bare bones implementation of a Xiaomi eCash server. Like, it's a bearer voucher. Like that is the type of thing that we need to be moving towards.
Yeah, right. And it's not necessarily perfect, right? It's still, everything is tied to one. It's super centralized, and it's very risky, and it's not perfectly private, yes, but it's at least a step in the right direction. And I prefer something like this absolutely to Tiffany. That of course is extremely convenient, right? For example, I could do here add world crypto net, and I would immediately get here my Lightning Network invoice that I could pay, right? But of course, this doesn't mean that it is really, right, the let's say, yeah, the true ethos of Bitcoin. And there's something like this, although it might be a bit too bare bones for now, it is still more true to the core of Bitcoin. But yeah, so how could we improve this even further? Yes, on the privacy side, right? We've spoken a bit about that already. But even further than that, how can we make that even better?
Just user experience. Like, that's the managing and storing and transferring of vouchers and smoothing that out. You know, like something like this is, like, from my understanding, just used for the service, but like there's no reason why you can't transfer that voucher to somebody else and them turn it in and get a new one right away, so that you can't double spend them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Pierce, that would be Xiaomi and eCash, a really basic implementation, right? You get a voucher right here, either this one or this one, or well, no, that's the invoice. So you will get that voucher, right? And you get that only after you pay, let's say, 1,000 Satoshis into this account. And then in the centralized database here of Koala Studio, of the Xiaomi and eCash Mint, right? They would then register this specific eCash token here with the corresponding amount, and then you hand this token here, this voucher, to someone else, and this someone else publish or broadcast the voucher to the mint again, together with a new voucher that is going to be again completely random and not tied to the first one. And then this can be used in order to further then in the future spend to someone else, right? So there are ways of doing this. And I mean, is Xiaomi and eCash really that old, right? It's, I mean, sorry, is it that new, right? It's something that's really old, but why did it fail?
Because there wasn't something like Bitcoin to actually be a decentralized money underneath of it. Like, David Chaum actually had a company in the 90s, and two banks who tried to actually implement this, but it wasn't used. And also a big fundamental flaw at the end of the day was it was dollars underneath. So the foundation wasn't there, but it is now.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's the beautiful thing with Bitcoin, is that it is a secure base layer, and on top we can build some amazing stuff, right? So, for example, if we see here that that with Bitcoin we can build on top of that something that at least the funding of this mint is going to be transparent, right? So, for example, I would like to know if Koala Studio here actually has some reserves of the Bitcoin that I sent them. And the cool thing with the Bitcoin blockchain is that they can, well, somewhat prove it, right? Not perfectly, but at least they can show the assets and stuff. And then further with the smart contract scripting language and some multi-signature or schemes or some vaults or other advanced scripting scripts, we can make some really cool things and further reduce the risk of koala studying or losing money and stealing money. But right then further, especially when we have mints that have a reputation and that have a long-term identity, do you think that this reputation and just in general business practices is going to be enough to incentivize them to do good?
I mean, yeah. Like if you distribute the control and you give a viable business model with revenue built on a reputation, it comes down to, do you want to keep sustainable revenue or run away with a one-time payoff? I mean,
Mhm.
that's the same dynamic that's keeping a lot of businesses in this space in check. Like, why aren't bucket shop exchanges all over the place disappearing? Yeah, it happens, but most of them still keep running their business.
Yes, exactly, right? It's not just a one-time game. It's actually a recurring game of several rounds. And yes, you might win the one single round when you just do an exit scam and get out. But this means that in the future rounds you can no longer play. And if you can no longer play, this means that you no longer have any revenue. And thus you are no longer going to be like a good businessman thus. So I do believe that there is an incentive for good and for the right businesses to behave properly. So, right, for example, here Koala Studio, like we know who Koala is, right? We know the person behind him. We know him for quite a long time. We know the project that he's been working on beforehand, and we know like who's working with and who's he associated with. So if he would start running off, then again, like we would know where to go to, at least to complain and to destroy his reputation. So here, Koala has absolutely much more, let's say, skin in the game. Uh, but of course, it's not perfect, right? So then, of course, the other aspect that you brought up is that they need a good business model, that they actually need to make revenue. And I absolutely agree that this is one major issue here with Tip and Me, is that they don't really have a business model. And thus, they don't really have a long term viability to stay afloat. And as I said, they have costs. They have to sacrifice some scarce goods in order to produce this service here, this website. And if they don't have good revenues, well, then they have to sell something else. And what can they sell? Well, what do they have? They have a bunch of metadata, and that is really important. So metadata is absolutely a viable business model, as we've seen with Facebook, and we've seen how horrible this can end.
Yeah, something like a custodial platform like that, it needs volume to actually, you know, pay its bills and make a profit, and not just volume in terms of sheer amounts of people using it, but the amount of money moving around. Like a million people tossing around a thousandth of a penny, that's not going to be a lot of money you can really shave off in fees, but that's going to be a lot of server costs processing things for a million people. It's
Yeah, exactly. So there are going to be costs. These have to be somewhat offset with some revenue. And of course, the question is, how do you do that, right? But of course, right there are business models here. For example, OpenNote, another custodial, well, somewhat wallet, somewhat payment processor that works both on chain and Lightning. And they, for example, have this revenue that for the first, I think, 10,000 euros worth of routed payments, they do not charge any fee, but afterwards they do. So of course, this is going to be really difficult on in the fact that they will not make any bootstrap or any money to bootstrap the system early on, but then eventually they will have a steady revenue model. So, do you
more
think that
importantly,
the,
to pay for things. Like if you burn through $10,000 in volume, you're doing more than a fraction of a penny in a transaction.
Yeah, exactly, right. And then again, then it is at a scale where it's actually probably worth it to charge then something. So this would be one source of revenue, and of course another one that here OpenNode here is providing would be, for example, fiat exchanges. So if you want to get your fiat shit coins, I don't know why, but if you need them, then this would be another add-on service. So what do you think of these cross-selling attempts here of making revenue with some other things other than the core product?
It is, as long as it's not something that's damaging to people's privacy or personal information. I mean, go for it. Like that's not an uncommon thing for a business to have multiple revenue streams. It's you're in it to make money.
Yeah, precisely, right? And absolutely nothing wrong with making money. It's a vitally important market mechanism that shows you if you're actually providing a service. If you do provide a service, then peers are going to be willing to sacrifice something in order to get it. And this sacrifice is going to be your profit. And then, of course, on the other hand, if it's going to be a really valuable service that you provide, you're going to get exponentially more sacrifice dedicated to you, which will help you again to sacrifice the costs that you need in order to build this service. So it's going to be very much a symbiotic circle and ecosystem here. But of course, making a profit is absolutely viable and absolutely needed. How else are you going to pay for it? And how else are you going to eat? Right?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's I don't know. Sorry, I'm gonna have to probably get going in a few minutes, but it really drives the point home. Like, if you're gonna do something in this space, you should do it right, especially when it starts involving other people's money or custodying things, because it's like it's not you who is going to bear the cost of something getting fucked up or being architected wrong. It's everybody using what you built.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. And maybe, Shinobi, before you get going, then we've talked about all the countless problems that we see here with custodial Lightning services and that they are not Lightning at all, right? They're a centralized database. But, well, how can what can we do against that? And that is first and absolutely foremost, run your node. God damn it. I mean, is it that difficult? No, it's not. Absolutely not. There are 101 different ways you could do it. If you have a laptop, use Pierre Rochard's Node Launcher. That's awesome if you're running Windows. Well, no, if you're running Windows, first of all, install Linux. Then, if you want to have a dedicated always on device, which is very much useful if you don't want to have your laptop running all the time, well, cheapest would be Raspberry Pi. And here, the Raspberry Blitz just recently released here version 1.0. So that is awesome. I think total hardware cost for this thing is like $75. So there's no financial excuse to not run a node. Of course, this year is going to be low in power. So, of course, the Nodal, which I also have here behind me, a bit more expensive at roughly $400, but you get a bunch of cool additional hardware with not just Lightning and Bitcoin Core, but also, of course, with BTC Pay Server and all the other stuff. For example, Samurai Whirlpool is coming here on the Nodal as well. So you can actually get zero-link coin joins done here on your WhatsApp on your Nodal, which is fantastic. Right, I mean, might be something else here, like the Bitseed, who are, by the way, partnering up with Samurai in order to produce a Samurai exclusive Bitseed hardware that has a nice little Samurai here on top and looks awesome and cool. So there are different ways on running your own Lightning Network node, and that is, of course, first and foremost. But what other like specific steps can be taken in order to improve the privacy of Lightning Network?
Actually use Lightning Network and not some custodial thing tied to your Twitter account. I mean, like, if you really want to tinker around with things, go try Eclair. Like, spin up, like he said, a node with Pierre's launcher. Like, actually run the software instead of giving up all of your privacy just to tinker around with things on a web page.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's a lot of fun, and you're going to learn a bunch of it. And well, one thing that I really can recommend is that you can use one of these 13,500 Bitcoin that have been made fungible since August 1st, 2018, and you can use one of these UTXOs in order to fund your Lightning Network node. So, for example, if you have a 0.1 Bitcoin UTXOs, 10 million Satoshis, quite a couple sats, then you can use one of these UTXOs to fund your Lightning Network node. And then out of this 0.1 UTXOs, you can build, let's say, 10 payment channels with outbound liquidity. Maybe just 5 if you want to have them a bit bigger. And then you are going to have a well-connected node for 0.1 Bitcoin that do not have any history attached to them. Nobody is going to know what you have done before you've opened your Lightning Network node. And that is very valuable. Okay, so that is the minimum that you have to do with funding your Lightning Network node is use Wasabi coin joins. And then go further, of course, it's that you absolutely have to run your node on Tor only. That is crucial, because if you don't communicate over Tor, then you're telling the entire world exactly how much money you have and where you are on the internet. And that is pretty fucking stupid, especially at this early stage of Lightning Network, where we don't even yet have proper backups. I mean, like, it's insane how early we still are. And the risk of losing funds just because of your, like, for example, a database corruption on your hard drive, that would be enough to completely wipe out your node, right? So there are still many, many improvements to come. And the thing really is here that we have to take all the steps possible. So do you have some additional tricks that you can recommend to the peers?
Yeah, just keep your things stored redundantly. Obviously Tor only, like you said. I mean, I'm kind of shocked at how much stuff isn't making that a default out there on Lightning. And then, like, backups, especially Eclair, I know actually does an encrypted backup to a cloud storage if you do that for your channel states. And it's not some fucking idiotic user selected password like Coinbase's wallet. It's actually encrypted to one of the keys from your HD seed. So it's not something that can be trivially brute forced by, anybody out there who can guess your average person's password.
Wait, is Coinbase really that stupid to provide the backups encrypted with a regular chosen password?
Yep.
Oh, damn it. I mean, like,
Well, what do you expect from them at this point?
Yeah, really. I mean, I knew that they did the cloud backup, which I'm not too big of a fan. I see the reason for Lightning Network, especially at the early stages, because, well, you need to have like the most recent state of the payment channel. I absolutely don't see any reason why you would have a cloud backup for your on-chain wallet, because it's a static backup. Do a paper backup, and you're going to be 1,000 times more secure. And then if you do it at least like 4096-bit RSA, like, at least. Oh God. Never use Coinbase.
Wiser words have never been spoken.
Yeah. Oh no, okay. By the way, though, when we're talking and praising Eclair again, and I think Eclair is by far the most convenient Lightning wallet that we have for the mobile. It's the only one for the mobile, if we only count like real Lightning Network wallets. And what they have on testnet already, and with what I've tested, and it works flawlessly, and I'm so excited, is that they now have receive features as well. And although it's still a SPV wallet, so you don't have a full archive of the blockchain, and you don't validate the entire blockchain.
That's one thing specifically I wanted to mention with Eclair. Very much disconnect money that you send there through something like Wasabi, because they are not using Neutrino as of right now. They're actually just kind of plugging into Electrum servers.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely disconnect your coin history. And if you have any specific Electrum server out there that you trust, make sure that your wallet's pointed at that one.
Run your own Electrum server, right? That pretty much solves all your issues. But yeah, the cool thing with the receive function here for Eclair is that they didn't really like change too much of it. They just increased the time interval that you have in order to defend yourself against a breach remedy transaction. So if someone is going to steal from you, you have 2 weeks time but the literal 2 weeks this time before you have to be active and defend yourself. And if you don't do that, you're going to lose money. But hopefully, your phone is going to be online and connected to the internet at least once every 2 weeks. You don't even have to open your app. They actually do a basic check in the background without you opening the app, and then it would prompt you if it needs to do some further inquiries. And I mean, so far it works on testnet. I've received a bunch of transactions on my phone already. It works pretty damn good. It's actually really fun to play with. And right, but we needed to wait a long time before that. I mean, what, like, Lightning testnet was what, October 2017. Lightning mainnet was January 2017, when it was like hacky to get there. And Eclair wallet was, I think it was May 2018, right? And they took so long just in order to get it to this state. And we're still not there. We still don't even have receive functions here for your wallet. We still don't even have proper backups of your wallet. So we are still reckless as hell, and we really have a bunch of further improvements to do. And especially, we have a bunch of education to do. And it starts with your keys, your Bitcoin. So don't use custodial wallets, because you are going to lose, not just in the potential of loss of funds, but absolutely not even a potential, but without a shadow of the doubt, you're going to lose all your decency, and you're going to no longer have any privacy and anonymity. So yeah, peers, run your node, control your keys. That's the two basic rules. So yeah, Shinobi, thank you very much here for joining me today. That was awesome. Do you have any last topics? Anything else that you want to bring up?
As a last dig, I'm kind of just waiting to watch the micropayments in video game meme try and go beyond smartphone games and little arcade things into the real video game world. A lot of Lightning people are going to be in for a very rude awakening when they realize that gamers have been pissed about pay-to-play and micropayments for years now, and multi-billion-dollar companies are starting to just completely destroy their businesses by not moving away from it. So when you start moving into real video games and not little arcade things and smartphone apps, this pay-to-play micropayments thing is not going to be received like you think it is.
I think it's really going to be really interesting, because I mean, imagine World of Warcraft with a real currency.
I can right now, and I can see the exact same thing that's happened for years now play out. They put some new thing in the store that costs real money to buy, and the entire game's user base, all in sync, lose their shit and start screaming, "Are you fucking kidding me? You're not fixing bugs in the game. You're not fixing broken things. You're just trying to get us to buy some fancy looking new thing with money. Go fuck yourself."
Well, I agree that, of course, right, open source everything. I'm actually really curious how Lightning Network might evolve open source gaming. That's something that I'm really curious about. But I'm really interested in the peer-to-peer aspect. Like, if you have the opportunity of one player sending money to another player without any intermediary, like peer-to-peer as it's supposed to be, and then you couple that up with a massive multiplayer online game and like huge worlds that now actually have the possibility to have a real economy based on not in-game shitcoin diamonds, but actually on sound money Bitcoin. That is very interesting, and I think that is very much something to explore. But I agree that they're like, it's limited. Games are just games, right? And of course you're willing to pay some for it, but yeah. Well, maybe it's more intuitive when you don't have to pay like $5 for everything, right? If you only pay a couple cents, maybe that's something.
I think the only real logical way it might work is to pay as you play through a game. So if you don't like it, you stop and you don't pay the full price. Aside from that, No, I think the rage against micropayments and pay to play is way too strongly entrenched.
Well, it's definitely not gonna be easy, but we have a couple bright minds working on it. So let's see. Pierce, we've talked today about the horror, the absolute tragedy that might, maybe, probably be Lightning Network custodial wallets like TipInMe, like OpenNode, like Satoshi's wallet or wallet of Satoshi. Well, no, Satoshi would not have used this custodial wallet. I'm sorry. And we've also talked, right, that these are not just a risk for you losing money because you don't have the keys, but especially that it's absolutely a complete a complete giving up of your right to privacy and the right to being left alone. And when you use one of these services, just be really, really careful. You are completely glassern and they can see everything that you do there. So be really careful when using these, and don't put all the funds in there. Have at least a Lightning node. Yes, okay, you might have a TipInMe or like an open node as a secondary option, maybe, but of course, minimum run your own node. Then we've also talked about how we can improve it, and that would be, for example, here some voucher systems, as we can see it with Donner Lab or with Koala Studio. Oh yeah, by the way, it's funny that you say that Lightning Network games are not going to be so interesting, but actually the most advanced payment or custodial services that we have here are both provided by the two gaming studios that we have in Bitcoin. So
Lightning beyond arcade games. Like pay to play is something that drives fake games, I will call them, little smartphone apps and things like Candy Crush. But if you try putting that in something like World of Warcraft or like EA games, yeah, you will have a war on your hands.
Well, maybe. We don't know. Let's see. But maybe it's a huge opportunity. Let's see. But Pierce, there is nothing else than running a full node. That is Bitcoin. If you're not running a full node, you are not using Bitcoin as it is supposed to be used. You're a third-class citizen, not even a second-class citizen, third-class citizen. Not acceptable. Run your node. If you want it cheap, get a Raspberry Blitz. If you want it efficient, get a Nodl. If you want it expensive but a bit more powerful, get the Bitseed, especially maybe the cool red one from Samurai here, of course, but also the Samurai Whirlpool and Dojo gonna be working on the Nodl, which is fantastic. Appears always clean your Bitcoin before you do anything with them, and especially when you open your long-term Lightning Network channels. That, by the way, might be linked to your identity, right? Because if you, for example, do one withdrawal from TipInMe or OpenNode or another custodial wallet, well, then your Lightning Network node public key will be at least known by TipInMe, and thus it can be tied to your identity. So make sure that you have CoinJoint UTXOs to fund your Bitcoin Lightning Network wallet. Pierce, also thank you much here for hanging out in the chat. That was, as always, fantastic. A bunch of people hanging out there. And if you liked what you saw, and if you want to shoot a little thank you note, you have the not custodial Tallycoin, but, well, the not so private. Although, let's actually check this out here, because we do have in the Tallycoin, Brian and I talked about this beforehand. We actually do have the Panem here. So if you want to use the Panem, I'm Fancy Snow 967. So if you want to do completely private public donations, then use the Panem here as used in the Samurai wallet. And by the way, right, that's how you actually then build a software that uses the state-of-the-art tools and technologies here, like, for example, Tallycoin. So that is awesome. And I especially want to give a shout out right here to this address, who has today, I think, yes, today, sent 600,000 Satoshis, quite a couple Satoshis. So that is awesome. Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. But of course, we would continue babbling about Bitcoin regardless. And by the way, just as a little reminder, I've started from today on putting my GPG fingerprint down here in the right corner. So if you want to send me a secure message, then use this here to encrypt your communication. And just today, I've sent a couple GPG encrypted messages over I2P boat, which is outstanding. So you're going to have a great encrypted communication plus a secure communicational network. And that is hopefully, well, I think probably the best way that we can communicate in a somewhat convenient way. So yeah, maybe Brian, now the very, very last words now. What's up?
Stop using bad things. I don't know.
bad things. And the baddest of them all is Coinbase. Get the fuck out of Coinbase. Priority number one. Piers, thank you very much for joining me here, and see you on the next show. Bye bye.